Hello folks, this is Steve AB4L. I got a little bit of frog. I want to put together a couple of ideas. Remember, I'm just an idiot running my mouth. But I did start with personal computers and programming in 1983. So I've seen a few things. So right now on Slashdot, Google Cloud caused outage by ignoring its usual code quality protections. Google Cloud attributed last week's widespread outage, like a third of the internet went down worldwide, to a flawed code update in its service control system that triggered a global crash loop. One thing goes down that's dependent on something, and then somebody else that you wouldn't think was connected goes down, and then they cause somebody else to go down due to missing error handling and lack of feature flag protection. Google's explanation of the incident opens by informing readers that its APIs and Google Clouds are served through the Google API management and control planes, blah, 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 blah. And I'll give you the whole deep thing. Oh, look at it. Oh, look at all of this. Now, there's a commentator here. His video posted 2 hours ago, the internet is actually falling apart. This is not his first commentary on that massive outage. I think he's worried. Now, I'm going to make a jump. What they said here was, despite the basic rules of safety and software quality, I started out at that internationally owned, internationally operating IT company. My first 3 years was as a software tester, showing to the developers that every time they made a new improvement in the code, they screwed up. And that they needed to fix the screw up to make the improvement they made actually work right. Did you get that? And they just admitted that they skipped that step. Google just admitted they skipped that step. They must have been in a hurry to deploy something. Usually what happens is some manager will okay it because half his salary is base and half his salary is bonus based on meeting objectives on time. So they'll sign off on shit to get their bonus. Do you understand that? I've seen it more than once. So there was an article on here that I was caught on to 2 days ago having to do with Python, and here it is. There's the ad up top. Python creator Guido van Rossum. I like his name because he's got an Italian personal name but he's Dutch. Asks, is worse is, quote, worse is better still true for programming languages? In 1989, a computer scientist argued that more functionality in software actually lowers usability and practicality. I'll translate that. When you over-engineer something, you can't stop screwing yourself up. That's my interpretation. Leading to the counterintuitive proposition that worse is better, but is that still true? Now, what does he mean by worse is better? Python's original creator, Guido van Rossum, addressed the question last month in a lightning talk at the annual Python Language Summit 2025. Wikipedia. Worse is better, also called the New Jersey style. I haven't read this before. It's a term conceived by Richard P. Gabriel in a 1989 essay to describe the dynamics of software acceptance. It refers to the argument that software quality does not necessarily increase with functionality. Now, what does that mean? Let's say you've created a new programming language. Oh, we need another function in here to calculate yet another way of doing colors. We need another function to how to handle integers, not to 16 bits, to 32 bits, to 64 bits, to 128 bits, to infinity. And you can only leap off of the original code because when you get into that kind of expansion, you have so many people pointing out exceptions and stuff like this that you have to take care of all of them, and you start tripping over yourself because your IQ's not high enough to think of all of the traps that will occur. Your IQ as a human is not high enough to conceive of all of the exceptions that are going to screw you up that look so innocent that you never thought of, but happen in reality. So this guy was borrowing a phrase from somebody else. Python Software Foundation. News from the Python Software Foundation. Pardon me. The Python Language Summit 2025 Lightning Talks. That means they're short, and you probably want to hear them. These people have something important to say, but they're not going to take an hour. Is, quote, worse is better, still better. Guido wrote this. This was his presentation. The inventor of Python. Now, not long after Python became available by way of the internet, I was using it to program. When I left that internationally known, internationally operating IT company, I left behind a set of software programs that I had written in Perl scripting language, but they thought they were important enough for what I did with them that they assigned somebody. I was a band 6, they assigned a band 10 programmer to convert them to Python so that they could improve on them. Python has been in my background a little bit one way or another. I used to enjoy programming in Python. I haven't done anything in Python in years. Pay attention. The creator of Python programming, the Python programming language, Guido van Rossum, was up next and asked, is, quote, worst is better, still better? He concluded that this was more than a rant, was more of a rant than a proposal to get the core developers, the current core developers of Python. See, he developed Python, but then it became popular. Then all these other people got in there and they started contributing. They started contributing way more stuff than he was doing. But he was the inventor. To get core developers thinking, Guido started by recounting earlier periods of Python development from 35 years ago, when he used Unix, that's an operating system, AT&T, almost exclusively, and thus Python was greatly influenced by Unix's worst is better philosophy. Now we're quoting him. For Python, worst is better has served me really well for a long time, especially when Guido was writing most of the code. Did you get that? When he was writing most of the code. Back when I was using Python, he was writing the code. Guido shared many ways that early Python versions were worse than what we have today, such as no long integers, being built on top of C Studio, never mind what that is, not having classes. Those limitations meant that Guido could get something working in 3 months. Even in the language definition, I didn't think hard about many design issues, he says. I copied what I found from C, Python's predecessor. Over the years, every single thing where I took a shortcut was eventually fixed. In those times, worse was better was key to getting the language accepted. I couldn't afford to work 3 years on language design without user feedback or endorphins from... What's he getting at? The initial release of Python happened less than a year after its development began, and none of the issues were fixed except classes. The fact that Python wasn't perfect encouraged... Now here's the key. The fact that Python wasn't perfect encouraged many people to start contributing. All of the code was straightforward. There were no thoughts of optimization. Oh, I know a feature you need to add in. I can write the code for that. Let me see if you like it. Oh yeah, that's great. I'll add that in. Does worst is better still have a role today? Guido contrasted early development to how Python was developed. Now, how Python is developed now. How Python is developed now. How is it developed now? By individual contributors throwing an idea out and a little bit of code? Why don't you try putting this in, see if people like it? Maybe other people work on it, make it better. Things I didn't think about it. But this is something we need. No. How is it today when it's the super language? Features that take years to produce from teams of software developers features that take years to produce from teams of software developers from big tech companies. The static type system requires an academic level understanding of esoteric type system features. What's he saying? He's saying that the people who are doing Python development aren't individuals. They have a particular purpose. They are working on something so sophisticated and making it so complicated to handle every little thing that nobody ever would have thought of, but they need for their super machine, special purpose, product, feature, that they take 3 to 5 years doing it, and then when you get it added into Python, nobody else understands it. It's so perfect, and you need a PhD to understand their definitions that run into books. Literally, I tried looking up some things. He says, and this just isn't Python the language, 30 third-party projects like NumPy are maintained by folks who are paid full-time to do it. And I went, what's NumPy? I should have known. Num is numerics, Pi is Python. NumPy. Nearly every scientist working in Python draws on the power of NumPy. NumPy brings the computational power of language like C and NumPy is the fundamental package for scientific computing in Python. Oh yeah, we have these Fortran libraries from 40 years ago when computers had to be so goddamn efficient to do stuff in 4 megabytes of memory and swap intermediate results in and out like they did in the atomic bomb project with Monroe calculators that were manually cranked. And they did it on punch cards. And they had to be so efficient and be able to break it down completely because they didn't have any big computing power. So they had to put geniuses on how to do it. Note the word geniuses. NumPy is the fundamental package for scientific computing in Python. It's a Python library that provides a multi-dimensional array object, various derived objects such as masked arrays and matrices, and an assortment of routines for fast operations on arrays. They're describing the libraries from Fortran from the beginning of the atomic bomb project where they just started to have computers, the hydrogen bomb project. Arrays including mathematical, logical, shape manipulation, sorting, selecting, I/O, discrete Fourier transforms, basic linear algebra, basic statistical operations, random simulation, and much more. Do you understand that the people who are going to use this have PhDs and are getting paid $500,000 a year to do the programming with it? For cutting-edge scientific esoteric programming, but it's in Python. This is not what Guido had in mind. And that's what he's talking about. As Python left 90% of the world's programmers who might use, left them behind. I'm not exaggerating about that. There was a reason why I stopped using Python. I couldn't even read the definitions and understand them. And I'm not stupid. This isn't just Python the language. It's third-party projects like NumPy are maintained, in other words, major pieces of modern Python are maintained by folks who are paid full-time to do so. Python. There's python.org, Python tutorial, Python programming language is a high-level general-purpose programming language. Its design philosophy emphasizes code readability, but the inventor says it's not code readable anymore. And the use of significant indentation, type checked, all this kind of stuff. Guido van Rossum began working on Python in the late 1980s as a successor to the ABC programming language. Have you ever heard of that language? And he first released it in 1991 as Python 0.9. It wasn't even 1.0 yet. Python 2.0 was released in 2000. That's about when I started using it. But why don't we click on who he is? We're going to get now to where I'm going. Pay attention to what I'm going to read. Now, he was born and raised in the Netherlands, University of Amsterdam. He's a mathematician. Born in 1956, a Dutch programmer, he's the creator of the Python programming language, for which he was the benevolent dictator for life. Is the title given to a small number of open source software development leaders, typically project founders, who retain the final say. Think of Linux. Linux is the same as the first name of that one. Typically project founders who retain the final say in disputes and arguments within the community about what will and will not be included and how it will be done. But he's not the dictator for life anymore. We're getting to the point. He worked for Google from 2005 to 2012. This guy worked at Google where he spent half his time developing the Python language. At Google, he developed something else that was written in Python. He named the software, blah, blah, blah. He did Dropbox. That's gone, but I remember it. In 2020, van Rossum announced he was coming out of retirement to join the developer division at Microsoft. He currently holds the title of Distinguished Engineer at Microsoft. In December 1989, van Rossum had been looking for a hobby programming project that would keep him occupied during the week around Christmas. As his office was closed, he liked to play with his computers. But think of what the computers were like in 1989. With 4 megabytes of memory and 15 megabytes of hard drive. The first hard drives, megabytes. he decided to write an interpreter for a new scripting language he had been thinking about, a descendant of ABC, that would appeal to Unix C hackers. He chose the name Python for his programming language, not because of the snake type, but because of the comedy series Monty Python's Flying Circus. Let's have fun. And the last paragraph is, in July of 2018, Van Roosum, the inventor of Python, announced he would be stepping down from the position of benevolent dictator for life of the Python programming language. Now let's get to the last paragraph of this article. In 1999, the year is 2025. In 1999, he, the inventor of Python, a hobby programming language, easy for people to understand, write code in, and contribute to, submitted a funding proposal to DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. That's why there's an internet. That's why there's computers today. Proposals that went through DARPA and got money for these esoteric crazy ideas that turned into major industries and modern features of our lives, like the web, called Computer Programming for Everybody. That was his proposal title, Computer Programming for Everybody, in which he defined his goals for Python as an easy and intuitive language just as powerful as major competitors. Open source, so anyone can contribute to its development. Code that is as understandable as plain English. Suitability for everyday tasks, allowing short development times. By 2019, Python had become the second most popular language on GitHub, the largest source code management website on the internet after. So why did he quit that? And the answer is because today the major contributions to the Python language are done by industrial teams with PhDs that write definitions and arcane functions that only they can understand and are only for their special use. And people like me and here's the point of why I started with this article. What he is predicting is that we're going to see more of this. Google Cloud attributed last week's widespread worldwide outage, not only of Google, but many AWS, part of AWS, and others. Cloudflare went down too, not totally, but a major part of it. Attributed last week's widespread outage to a flawed code update in its service control system that triggered a global crash loop, dragging down hundreds of others with it, hundreds, thousands of websites. When you get down to the ones you've never heard of, after you get through with the big headline ones that went down. Due to missed error handling and lack of feature flag protection. In other words, somewhere in this API, it got so sophisticated that the guy working on some arcane part of it got it wrong and nobody saw that. Nobody could figure it out, and there was no way to software test it because it would require an IQ of 180, and when they deployed it, it pulled down about a quarter to a third of the internet almost instantly. And the way they recovered when they finally figured out where it was going on is that they turned it off. And that's why Guido no longer has much to do with Python, because it's been taken away from everything he dreamed about it being. And I didn't even mention AI, which is the next step of us not even understanding what's going on under the covers. Remember, I'm just an idiot running my mouth. Steve AB4L saying see you in 73.